Okay, in the government's perpetual war on everything, one of the easiest targets has been smokers. We all know smoking is bad for individuals and it's very damaging to our health. Many will claim it puts an additional strain on our healthcare system, but there is some question over whether the cost of that extra strain is greater than the taxes that tobacco sales generate. Right now, it's estimated that up to 65% of the cost of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And that accounts for why a packet of smokes can cost as much as $80. There's also the banning of alternative nicotine delivery systems like vaping. And you just have to walk down any street and you see how that ban is producing a raft of now illegal activity, both selling vapes and people vaping themselves. But there's so much more to this. It's a very unsavoury side attached to the ban or the unaffordability of tobacco products. It's made it very, very profitable for organised criminal elements to sell illicit tobacco, which is known in the trade as chop chop. In places like Victoria, the government's war on tobacco has delivered a war in the criminal underworld, where there's been a spate of firebombings and murders attached to illicit tobacco sales. Well, joining me now is former AFP and Border Force officer and founder of the Tobacco Strike Team, Rohan Pike. Rohan, thanks so much for joining me. Why are organised criminal elements moving into the illicit tobacco business?
Well, that's because organised crime gangs are all about the money, Cory. And there's no easier way at the moment to make that money than via the illicit tobacco trade. It's a low-risk, high-profit crime. These gangs can make up to $10 million per container that they get landed on the shore. And of course, at the retail level, there's very little enforcement happening, so it's easy for them to get their product to the marketplace. Of course, these organised crime gangs have been present in this market for decades, but only recently there's been other players have wanted to move in to the market, been attracted by the high profits that they can make, and they've brought attention to themselves, as you've said.
Yeah, one of the challenges here, and I was completely unaware of this until recently, but the fire bombings, there's been murders in Victoria, all over illicit tobacco sales. What is this, just like a turf war that's going on in this space, or are there further details that we should be aware of?
Yes, that's basically what it is. There's been 30 fire bombings over the last 6 months, and as you say, there's at least 3 murders that police are investigating, they say are linked to these so-called tobacco wars. There's also been a handful of shops in Queensland that have been firebombed, so this is not just a Victorian-centric problem, it's a nationwide problem that they're dealing with. And yeah, it's caused by rival gangs wanting to get a market share. It is a simple turf war. They extort the retailers, encouraging them with violent means to sell their products, and if they don't, they get firebombed.
So, Rohan, are these legitimate tobacco retailers, or are these just people setting up on the, in a side alley or in a retail front, pretending to do something else but selling illegal tobacco under the counter?
Well, originally there were just a host of legitimate retailers selling tobacco. Some of these were approached to sell the illegal product, but now these gangs have realised that police and other authorities are not enforcing any laws or don't have appropriate laws at the retail level and are setting up their own stores simply to get rid of their own product to the punters that come in. So there's been an enormous increase in the number of shops that are selling tobacco now.
All right, you mentioned a couple of times that the penalties don't seem to be there. The laws, you said, are, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but unenforceable or not practical. What is the government doing about it, and what are the penalties in this space if you get caught?
Well, not enough, and that's not suppressing the demand, both from the consumers, but also for all points along the supply chain past the border. There are very few laws in Australia that address this problem, and it's partially because it's a newish type crime type, but also partially because the government haven't given enough attention to the problem up till now. They've had plenty of opportunity and plenty of advice. The government's already had 2 inquiries. The Parliamentary Joint Committee on Law Enforcement and the Black Economy Task Force have both had inquiries, and they both made sensible recommendations which unfortunately haven't been implemented to this stage. So the federal government haven't done nearly enough. Here in Victoria, credit to the Victorian Police who've set up their own task force to deal with the violence. But the violence is really just a symptom of the bigger crime type itself. So that is the thing that the federal government need to address.
What do you think needs to be done in this space as far as penalties and new laws passed?
Well, firstly, the government, one of the recommendations that came to the government, which they haven't accepted, is that the overall responsibility for illicit tobacco needs to be moved from the Health Department to the Home Affairs Department. It is a crime problem and a law enforcement agency needs to be in charge. After that, they would then need to create a national plan, which hasn't been done. Legislation, especially post the border, needs to address all the criminality that is seen along the supply chain. That hasn't been done. Obviously, we need coordination between the federal and state authorities. That's one of the recommendations. Additionally, a massive increase in resources needs to be given to these law enforcement agencies because it is going to take quite a bit of staff to turn around this problem. And we need a licensing regime, preferably a nationally consistent one. But in Victoria, we haven't got any licensing whatsoever. So anyone can be selling tobacco, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen this outbreak of violence, particularly here in Victoria.
It seems to me that this is a case of government policy overreach, right? They want to put the brakes on smoking, so they keep putting the price of tobacco, make it out of the reach for the people who want to smoke, and rather than driving them to quit, it's driving them to pursue other opportunities to obtain nicotine delivery or tobacco products. We didn't have these problems when smokers could afford to get their fix, did we?
No, we didn't. And you're exactly right. It's policy overreach. I think the health policy of this country in relation to tobacco is now failing. It may be correct to say that consumption went down 10 to 15 years ago when the taxes started to increase, and so it had a positive effect then. But now some of those levers that have been pulled by the health department, such as the price increase and packaging, they've been exhausted. And now the further price increases, and our cigarettes are the most expensive in the world, so the price increases have been extreme. And as I say, those levers have been exhausted, and people now, when they see prices go up, go immediately to the illicit market, which they know is freely available, and they won't have any consequences come back on them if they do so. And these are previously normal, law-abiding citizens who just see no other option but to go to that.
Yeah, they see it as a victimless crime, except it's not. It's preventing the government from getting taxes, firstly, but secondly, it's aiding and abetting organised crime in this country. I'm surprised that they seem to be turning a blind eye to it. Rohan, Pike, I'd love to talk to you more about this another time, particularly about vaping, but I'm out of time right now. But thank you very much for joining me on Bernardi tonight.